There are three shortages that are already here and affecting you. Not shortages that are coming, but shortages that are already here. We're going to be talking about the police shortage. We're going to be talking about the shipping shortage. And we're going to be talking about money shortages. And this is very real, folks. These are impacting you in a day-to-day life, as well as all the people around you and the society at large. So we're going to be talking about what's going on with this. You may not have known that there's a police shortage. You've probably already experienced a little bit of a money shortage, and it is here already for a lot of people, and it's going to continue to get bigger. And we're going to talk about how we can have inflation in the society at large. Prices can be going up, but people's actual money is going down. Kind of a deflationary personal life, but then inflational environment around you. And that's super, super painful. Also, we're going to be talking about the shipping crisis. We have the shipping crisis I talked about before, about what's going on in Panama, is actually getting even worse. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. I'm going to clarify a little. Some of you guys had questions about how the Panama Canal can be running out of water. We're going to be talking about that as we go. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and we talk about things here on the channel that mainstream media doesn't want to talk about. And we're trying to get you guys ahead for what's happening. Now, there is the media out there, they want to scare you into inaction. I want to provoke you into action, to take steps, to protect yourself, your family, to know what's going on out there, not to be afraid, but to be more prepared. So let's jump into it, folks. So the police recruiting across the United States is down. Now I'm going to start comparing 2020 numbers to 2022, and the results are shocking. So both police agencies across the United States, which are not obviously one department, every town and city has their own department, so it becomes a little difficult to try to track these numbers, but there are some organizations out there that have been doing just that. They've been compiling numbers, they've been doing surveys and trying to figure out what's going on with the labor market with police. And it's bad, folks. That's what it is. The U.S. Army can't keep enough people in that they're actually having to force people who are trying to retire, people whose enlistment, active part of their enlistment is up. They're being recalled to out of independent ready reserve. So if you're not familiar with that, basically most contracts of enlistments is you do 6 years active duty and then you have 2 years of independent ready reserve. And they always tell you, they won't recall you. That's just kind of like an official thing. Unless there's a war, they won't recall you. Well, President Biden just signed a decree making it so that people can be recalled from independent ready reserve to be deployed to Europe. So that's kind of big news out there. Are we at war? Nope. But that always just reminds you to double check everything in your contract whenever you're signing up for anything with the U.S. government. Be aware of what you're going in, because you don't own you anymore. They own you. It's an honorable thing to do, and we thank everyone who is in the military or has been in the military for their service. But the U.S. Army is dramatically shortfalling their recruitment numbers. They're not getting enough people to go into the military. I know they're chasing after the people who don't know which bathroom to use. They're chasing after all the people on TikTok, but somehow they can't find people in those places that are willing to sacrifice their lives and be willing to serve their country, because most young people these days, having been brainwashed in schools, aren't proud of their country. And the last thing they want to do is they want to sign up for a police training program. And that's what we're seeing out there. So from 2020 to 2022, we saw an increase of 65%, a 65% increase in retirements. And that makes sense. A lot of police officers who are getting to the age of retirement are just like, you know what? I'm not going to put up with all this garbage. I'm not going to go through all this stupid stuff. I'm just done. I'm out. And they took their retirement. 66% increase in resignations. So not only are older folks in the police force taking retirement, taking early retirement, but younger police officers are done with all the crap they're having to put up with. All the politics, all the restrictions, all the dumb policies, they're done with it. And 66% increase in resignations. So, officers are leaving out the door. They're going out the door as fast as they can, right? Well, applications also decreased 69%. So you have a 65, 66% increase in people leaving, and a 69% decrease in applications for the positions that are open. Well, we're going to have to get a little creative about how we fill these roles, aren't we? And believe me, police agencies in cities and stupid municipalities around the country are doing just that. They are taking to TikTok, and they are to advertise. They're hiring. They're talking about removing the barrier of actually having to be a U.S. citizen, so that even illegal aliens can be citizen and can be police officers now. And people are like, no, that's not the case. I read it. I read the bill. It literally says this is in Illinois, and then I believe it's Colorado and California also have similar things. Basically, as long as you have it's not a work visa, it's a work approval. I forget off the top of my head what it's called again. But basically, if you come into the country illegally, you can then file for permission to work. And they basically give you a tax ID number, and then you have permission to work. It's not a green card. It's not, you're not here legally. You're just legally allowed to work, even though you're not legally allowed to be here. And if that makes sense to you, you should run for Congress. All right, so they're gonna. You don't need to be a citizen anymore to be a police officer. How great is that? You can be an illegal alien. You can be a police officer. Wonderful. Oh, do you have some incidents on your record, like marijuana or some other drug charges? Oh, well, that's not a big deal either. You can still be a police officer. And they're even looking at potentially people who have certain types of felonies can be police officers. Because they're desperate for police officers, why wouldn't you want to put criminals in charge of enforcing the law? And yet that's where we are as a country. Their surveys showed that from 2020 to 2022, 5% less officers across the whole country. A certain political party, which will remain unnamed here, set out to defund the police, to shut down all these police programs, shut down all these police stations. Well, they have succeeded. 5% of the police officers in the United States don't exist anymore. They've retired, they've resigned, they haven't been rehired. Those positions haven't been filled. And it's not just impacting cities. That's where you immediately think of it. Like, if you were like a Chicago police officer, I mean, that's crazier than doing a couple tours in Iraq, really. If you're a police officer in Baltimore, if you're a police officer in LA, my hat's off to you, because you're out there trying to enforce the law in these crazy places. You're brave. You're brave, and many of you are super honorable. Now, I have to admit the fact that more and more people are being hired due to, gender quotas and ethnicity quotas out there, and the quality of the hires are going down. I still imagine that the people that are willing to sign up for that are people, generally speaking, who are trying to do good. But we are seeing that that the high caliber police officers out there are starting to be slowly replaced, especially in these cities, by a lower caliber people, especially people with an agenda. That's where we are with police. And it's really impacting small towns, because small towns around the country are saying basically that they cannot compete with the cities, because the cities are throwing a whole lot more money at people, giving them a lot better training. So in California, Los Gatos Monte, they have a slot. This municipality has a slot for 39 officers, but they only have 28 officers. And you go across the country and you're seeing in Goodhue, Minnesota, they had their entire police force resign. Now, there's other issues there, but they said they had 0 applicants. Their police force resigned, their chief of police resigned, and their final day is August 24th, and the mayor there is flabbergasted that they've received 0 applicants. Now, would you want to go be a police officer somewhere where the entire police force just resigned? You might not want to get along with that mayor and the people in charge of that city or town. But what we're seeing across the board is that small towns are having a hard time competing with these big cities. Now, it's not as bad as it could be. It could be really catastrophic, but obviously people in these cities are getting recruited, brought in, and a lot of times they're putting in just as much time as they need to so that they can transfer, they can take a new job out in a smaller town that's a lot less crazy. But that's kind of where we are with police. So when you pick up the phone and you call for police, you may not get a response as fast as you expect. You may not get a response as fast as you should. Be aware of what's happening with your local police officers. Be aware of what's aggravating them with the local politics, right? And know if your police officers, if the police chief in your township, city, municipality are upset, or your county. Know what's going on out there, because those are the folks that when you need them, you're going to want them to be on your side. It also really helps to get to know them, because if you ever need them, they'll at least be familiar with who you are. You won't be an unknown. All right, so moving on to shipping. Real briefly, we have this issue down in the Panama Canal. Last time I reported on it last week, we had 154 ships, and we're not talking small ships. We're not talking about rowboats. We're talking about massive cargo ships with thousands of cargo containers per ship, right? Some of these ships can hold 15 to 17,000 cargo containers, 20-foot equivalent units, which a lot of the standard cargo containers are 2 20-foot equivalent units, right? But so they're trying to go through the Panama Canal, but the Gatong Lake is going dry. The water level just keeps dropping. So they have like a freshwater lake in the middle, and then locks going into the lake, right? From the ocean, you go up into the lake, and then you go across the lake, and then you go down through the locks down to the other ocean. So it's really actually dependent upon that lake. And the lake hasn't been getting enough rain. And so it's drying up. So they've started rationing how many ships can actually go through. They've also restricted the draft of the ships. So normally it's 50 feet deep is how deep that the ships can go. But now they're being restricted to 44 feet. That means over 30% of their cargo containers on the biggest ships need to be offloaded. They either need to be not loaded in the first place, which this has been kind of coming down the pike for a while. So a lot of the ships arriving at the Panama Canal already are carrying a lighter component of cargo containers. But some of the more recent ones are actually getting there and actually using the rail line. So they know they're going to be sitting there for 3 weeks to 4 weeks to 5 weeks now. We have 200 ships waiting to get through the canal. Normally they let 36 ships a day through. They're down to 32 ships a day. And this is causing us backlog. And the ships that are going through have to offload, if they're fully loaded and they're full-size Panamax, they're going to have to offload a third of their cargo. And then it has to go through the rail line. They have a railroad that goes across, and they have ports on either side. So they're at least trying to make do with what they got, but it's a problem. 40% of U.S. shipping containers go through the Panama Canal. Yeah, that includes the containers that go from east to west coast, on rail lines. That includes the ones that go by truck. Shipping containers, if a shipping container gets closed in one place in the United States, whether it's going overseas or whether it's going to another U.S. port or another U.S. city, 40% chance it's going through the Panama Canal. That's a big number, folks. 5% of the world's trade goes through the Panama Canal. And this thing is jammed shut. Like I said, the ships that are going through now have already waited 21 days. The ships just arriving now could be waiting 4 to 5 weeks before they get through the canal. Is that a problem? Yeah, it's a problem. And the water level of Gantong Lake keeps dropping. They don't have enough water to keep this thing operating, and they're not expecting to get rains for another couple months. Once they do, things will lighten up just a little bit, but the lake level is really low. The drought there is bad. All right, finally, let's get into money. We have a money shortage out there, particularly in the pockets of Americans, and if you're in other countries, we're seeing the same thing happening in the UK and Canada. We're seeing the same thing happening in Australia. We're seeing the same thing happening in other countries in Europe and other countries around the world. People are making less money. I know. It doesn't make sense, does it? Inflation is going up. The price of everything is going up, but people are taking home less money. They're working either less hours or they're working at lower wage jobs. Higher wage jobs are getting canceled and being replaced by lower wage part-time jobs. They're taking full-time jobs and splitting them up into multiple part-time jobs. They're taking full-time jobs, they're contracting them out to staffing agencies. And we're seeing this across the board. This is why the employment numbers look so great. Wow, we're adding all these jobs. It's so cool. But when you take a job and you split it into 3 jobs, that's not a good thing. That's really not a good thing. When you take one full-time job turning into one part-time job, that's not a good thing. And yet that's what we're seeing across the board. People who have one job has consistently declined over the last year since the cough. People with 2 or more jobs have increased. Does that sound healthy to you? The number of people who have more than one job is increasing, but the people with just one job who can make it with just one job are decreasing. Friends, things are getting tight out there. There's less money in people's pockets. People have been trying to ring it up on credit card debt. And we're starting, just in July, we started to see the credit card debt start to drop. That means, if we were living in rosy sunglass kind of land, we would say, well, that's great. People are starting to be more responsible with their money. Yeah. Are we talking about the same people here, folks? Because that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're hitting their credit limits and they have to start paying it down, or they are realizing how deep in poodoo they are, and they are being forced to stop spending quite so much. And that means that credit card debt is starting to drop, finally. That means spending is going down, and that is a really, really bad thing when it comes to retail and with the U.S. companies out there. Earnings are going to start dropping, which means the stock market is going to drop, which means people's retirements is going to drop, which means people are going to feel like they have less money, they're going to spend less money, which means, and the cycle just goes. That's called a recession, folks, and that's where we are right now. There's less money out there, but everything costs more. You could call it a money shortage, folks. All right, that's what we got out there. Police shortage, money shortage, and shipping shortage. These things are impacting you already, whether you know it or not. All right, folks, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.